Chapter 10. The Locked Room. A familiar kitchen held the boy once more. He was a pale, dark-haired child of 12 now, seated at a wooden table cluttered with potion vials, handwritten notes, and measuring tools. A plain wooden box sat before him, lid closed, no lock visible anywhere on it. Across the table, his mother slid the box toward him. "Open it." The boy took hold of the lid and pulled. Nothing happened. He twisted it, pressed at the seams, and struck it with the heel of his hand. Nothing. At last, he looked up. "It's sealed." His mother's answer was flat. "No, Tobias. It's protected." He tried again, harder this time, frustration rising fast. When the box still would not open, he threw it. His mother raised her wand at once, guiding the box in a smooth arc before it struck the floor and returning it neatly to the table in front of him. She gave him a disappointed frown and left the room. Tobias stayed where he was. He stared at the box with intense concentration. Hours passed. He tried everything he could think of, but nothing worked. When his mother returned to the kitchen, he looked up and said quietly, "It can't be opened. At least squibs can't open it." His mother looked away from him. "Don't say that word." Tobias lowered his eyes. "I can't do it." "Then you've already failed," she said, and again she left him alone. Tobias looked at the box for a long while after she was gone. Then something in him shifted. He stopped trying to force it open and began studying it instead. The hinges, the seams, the points where one piece of wood met another. At last, he stood, opened a cupboard, and took down a small glass vial and a thin metal pick. He applied the liquid in the vial to the hinges. It sizzled immediately. Then he used the pick to pry out the hinge rod, which came free with a soft metal click. The spell broke. The box opened. It was empty. The box was no longer the same box it had been a moment before. The enchantment had been compromised, and the work Tobias had done had not opened it so much as undone it. His mother returned and saw the open lid. For the first time, Tobias allowed himself a breath of victory. He looked at her, waiting for approval. She crossed the room, took the box, and examined it. "You didn't open it," she said. "You broke it." Tobias's face fell slightly. His mother leaned closer, her voice sharp with disappointment. "Magic said no." Then she straightened. "You went around it. That's the only useful thing you've done." She left him there alone with the broken box. It had been a few days since the potions shop incident, and for the moment, it seemed to have been the end of that. Then Gawain Robards handed Ron 3 new case files. "These match your potions memory theft," Gawain said. "2 happened 2 days ago, and they're only just realizing it now." Ron took the files and gave a tired look at the stack. "Nice. And on our Friday." Harry was already reading one of the reports. "Same thing, yes. Missing stock, no trace, no memory." "Different shops," Ron said. Harry spread the 3 files across the desk and added the potions shop report to the others. "There's something strange here," he said. "They're all supply stores. They keep expensive stock, yes, but why steal these items? Why not take galleons or gold?" Ron gave a slow nod. "It's stranger the way he does it. Like a ghost." In a secured room attached to a ministry-adjacent archive, long walls of locked enchanted cabinets enclosed a narrow chamber. In the center stood a long table, and on it were rolled blueprints laid out about a foot apart, each one marked with a small brass placard naming the building it represented. The largest blueprint of all bore a placard that read, "Gringotts." Outside the archive building, a man in a black cloak stood at the door. He placed a metal mask over his face, knocked once, and uncorked a small vial. The door opened. The guard blinked at him in annoyance. "You realize we're closed, right?" The masked man gently steered him back inside and settled him at his security desk. The guard stared ahead, blinking slowly, as if the world had become slightly difficult to keep in focus. The man in the mask went straight to the blueprint room. He crossed to the table, reached for the roll labeled Gringotts, and pulled. It did not move. He tried again. Nothing. "Anchor enchantment," he muttered. For a moment he stood perfectly still, then slammed his fist on the table. He drew out 2 vials, selected a dropper, and carefully applied a drop from each one to the edge of the parchment. When he tried again, the plan still would not budge. "It's sealed," he whispered, then corrected himself almost at once. "No, protected." He put the vials away, turned, and left the room as calmly as he had entered it. Behind him, the guard sat at his desk, looking at his own hand as though he had only just noticed it was there. The next morning, Harry and Ron were called in early. Gawain Robards looked tired when they entered his office, and the look on his face told Harry that the matter was no longer a nuisance. "I got an owl from the ministry this morning," Gawain said. "It seems your little thief attempted to steal the building plans for Gringotts Bank." Ron gave a low whistle. "Those would have anchor enchantments on them. Good luck with that." Harry frowned. "What makes you think it's our man?" Gawain leaned back in his chair. The night guard never reported anything to his supervisor. He didn't remember it happening, but the magical logs recorded a theft attempt. Harry frowned more deeply and murmured to himself, "Made mistakes this time." Gawain heard him. "Well then, let's take advantage of that." A little later, Harry and Ron crossed to the front desk of the Aurors office, where a young witch with silver hair and round glasses was working. This was Beatrice Robards, Gawain's daughter, who had only started a few weeks earlier, but already seemed to have brought a measure of order to the office. Harry asked if she could send an owl to the night guard at the archive. requesting that he come in for questioning. She gave a polite little bow. "Right away, sir." "It's Harry. Beatrice?" "Not sir." She smiled and hurried to do as she was asked. An hour later, the guard arrived, and Harry and Ron questioned him in an interrogation room. The man was still confused about almost everything that had happened the previous night. "I was there all night, I think," he said uncertainly. Harry could tell they would get nothing useful from him. At last, he stood and said, "Well, thank you for your help, and if you do remember anything else, please let us know." Meanwhile, in a dim little room that was really more of a large closet, a pale man with dark hair worked at a cramped bench. Mounted on the wall above him was a brass plaque commemorating 20 years of service to the ministry by Guinevere Rook. Above the plaque, fixed to a 10 by 10-inch board, was a brass cauldron held in place not by screws or glue, but by magic, an anchor enchantment. The man tested different compounds and wrote down their reactions. At last, he paused and considered what he had found. The object wasn't bound by force, he realized. It was connected to a specific object or location. He adjusted the formula, made a few notes, and tried again. This time, he placed the potion drops in a circle around the brass cauldron. They hissed into the wood and smoked. The man's eyes widened. He reached for the cauldron, and this time it lifted easily off the plaque. Solved. That night, he stood again outside the ministry-adjacent archive. Same mask, same mist, same guard, same room. Once more, he walked to the blueprint table, found the plans for Gringotts, and applied his potion in a careful ring around the parchment. The liquid sizzled and smoked. The roll shifted slightly, as though something holding it had finally let go. This time, when he reached for the blueprints, they lifted easily. He slid them into his shoulder bag and made his way out of the archive building. At the door, he paused beside the guard, who was looking thoroughly bewildered. "What an idiot," the man in the mask said. Then he opened another vial. A bluish mist drifted out, and the guard began to come back to awareness just enough to realize the masked man was standing in front of him. He whimpered and fell to the floor, bracing himself for whatever curse might come next. The masked man walked out of the archive, removed his mask, and disappeared into the night. It was the ministry janitor from Diagon Alley. The next day, Harry and Ron saw Kingsley Shacklebolt in Gawain Robards' office. They were standing and talking in low, tense voices when the Auror chief noticed the two of them looking on. Gawain raised his arms slightly, as if to say, "What can I do?" Ron frowned. What could they be talking about? Harry kept his voice low. "I don't know, but it doesn't look good." Moments later, Gawain and the minister left the office. Robards crossed straight to Harry and Ron, his face tight with panic. "In my office, please." Once inside, he sat behind his desk and said, "The minister has just informed me our man came back again last night, but this time he got it. The Gringotts blueprints." Ron stared. "What? That can't be. Did he take the whole table?" Harry shook his head. "It's an inside job. Only someone authorized could remove those plans." Robards shook his head sharply. "It's not an inside job. The plans weren't removed under authorization. The forensic wizards say the table was manipulated or compromised somehow, and that's how the parchment was removed. They don't know exactly how." Harry frowned, thinking. Robards continued, more troubled now than before. "That's not supposed to happen. Who are we dealing with? How do you break a spell without magic?" Harry and Ron went to the archive vault room and examined the table where the blueprints had been stored. The damage was clear now. A circle of burn marks spread over the wood, with cracks and scorches branching outward from the center like a web. Ron stared at it. "I've never seen anything like that." Harry nodded slowly. "He's getting around magic, not breaking it. This isn't really magic. It's chemistry." Later, they interviewed the guard again. This time, the man was able to recall one thing, just barely. "There was one thing," he said. "At least I think I remember it. I can kind of remember seeing the man wearing a mask." He hesitated, a Death Eater mask. Ron's eyes widened and shot to Harry. Harry turned back to the guard, his voice careful and firm. "Everything in this room is confidential until we find out what is happening. Do not discuss anything said here with anybody. Do you understand?" The guard swallowed. "Of course. I wouldn't think of it, sir." "Good. Thank you again. And if you remember anything else, let us know." The man nodded and left. Ron blew out a breath. "Oh, great. That's all we need. Death Eaters attacking Diagon Alley." "If this gets out," Harry said, "it won't be good. We need to tell Robards. And when the goblins find out their blueprints were stolen, that won't be good either," Ron muttered. Back in his own room, the ministry janitor unrolled the Gringotts blueprints across his workbench. He studied vault structures, ward layering, and the bank's internal systems while taking a bite of a biscuit and a sip of tea. It looked like the beginning of a long night. Harry and Ron were leaving the archive when Harry glanced sideways at Ron and said, "He's learning." Ron frowned. "For what, to rob Gringotts? I thought this guy seemed pretty smart. He rather gave himself away by stealing the plans." Harry looked ahead, his expression unreadable. "I don't think he cares."